What's up, y'all? Welcome to Tabletop Bros. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Necron Christmas Battleforce box. In our Necron's Quick Start Guide, we're going to be discussing the 1,000 point and 2,000 points list using the Battleforce as a basic starting point. Alright, so we got the brand new Christmas Battleforce box coming out for the Necrons, the HyperCrypt Legion. So getting started here, we have the Void Dragon, who is 290 points, one Overlord with Translocation Shroud, who is 85 points, and then we have two squads, 5 each of Lychguard for 85 points. Now they can alternatively be built as the Treyarch Praetorians, and then we have 10 Necron Warriors for 100 points, and one Scarab Swarm for 40 points. So that is going to give us a total of 685 points. So nice basic starting point for your Necron army. The Catan Void Dragon is a nice centerpiece model. He's powerful. He can deal with any kind of threats, whether it's vehicles, infantry. He can do some mortal wounds. You also have the Overlord that's going to give you some nice buffs and can be attached to some of your various units. And then you have some elites in the Lychguard that can do your actions, kill some stuff, or alternatively you could build them as the Treyarch Praetorians. You could alternatively do like 1-in-1 or all Praetorians. And then you have your warriors to do your basic actions, your cheap chaff. And then you have some scarabs to accomplish some of your secondary objectives or tie up key units. And now realistically, you can choose what to put in for your last like 300 points. You may want to put in some enhancements. There's definitely some nice ones depending on what detachment you choose. May want to put in some action monkeys or some other cheap chaff. And then you have a lot of detachment choices. The HyperCrypt Legion obviously is what this one is focused on. So I think that's probably the way to go in this one. The cool thing about the HyperCrypt Legion is it's going to give you a lot of extra mobility. So depending on what size game you're playing, you can pick up multiple units at the end of your opponent's turn, place them back into strategic reserves or deep strike, and then bring them in once you see what secondary objectives you need to complete or what targets you need to eliminate. So I think HyperCrypt Legion right now is probably the best detachment. It has some nice enhancements, some nice stratagems, but I think overall the up-down rules are what make it so good. So now jumping over here to the 2,000 point list, I think if you're going to finish out the 1,000 point list, you may decide you want to put in some more cheap chaff. You may want to use something you have in your existing force. Obviously the NightBringer would be a good choice as he's right around that 300 points. Realistically, filling out that 1,000 points is going to be the easy part. But I think getting up to 2,000 points, if you can plan out your list in advance, you make sure that you don't have any redundancy or stuff that you're not going to use. For me, I think the best route to go is to pick up the Combat Patrol, pick up the Silent King, the NightBringer, and then 2 HexMark Destroyers. That's going to give you basically 2,000 point list. So let's run down through that. So first we have the Silent King we're going to add in for 420 points. He is an absolute staple for any Necron list. He's got really good combat, he's got really good shooting, and then he has the ability to regenerate his pylons so he can take quite a bit of oncoming fire. Definitely a staple for any Necron list at 420 points. And then we have the NightBringer, so one more Catan. He's got damage reduction. He absolutely slaps. He can move pretty quick and overall is a massive threat for 295 points. And then we're going to get into the Necron Combat Patrol. The Combat Patrol is going to include one Overlord for 85 points with the Tachyon Arrow, one DoomStalker for 145 points with some long-range firepower. And then you're going to have a squad of Destroyers for 90 points. They're going to give you a nice little action monkey for fairly cheap. They're pretty durable and they can also do some killing. And then you're going to have another squad of Warriors for 100 points. One more squad of Scarabs for 40 points. And then I'd like to add in also 2 of the HexMark Destroyers. So they're really good Overwatch threat. They're single models. They're pretty cheap. They're able to accomplish secondary objectives, do a little bit of killing if they need to. They work particularly well in the HyperCrypt Legion as they have a small footprint on the board. So you can pick them up and then use them to do your actions or get them where they need to be. And that's going to give us a total of 1,315 points. So that's going to round out our 2,000 point list with the HyperCrypt Legion Necron Battleforce perfectly. Now, realistically, you have quite a bit of options or alternatives. Monolith is really good right now. Immortals are always good. They have quite a bit of firepower. Race and Flayed Ones are pretty common in like your typical competitive lists. You also have Destroyers and Heavy Destroyers if you want to focus in a little more on like the range firepower. Deathmarks are decent units if you're more interested in like sniping out particular characters that are buffing your opponent's armies. You oftentimes see like Ghost Arcs or Doomsday Arcs for like a little bit more mobility and good firepower. And then, of course, seeing the Tesseract Vault in some competitive play if you're looking to lean in heavy on like a big expensive model. So you've got a ton of different options. Obviously, it's really open to you depending on what type of army you're looking for or what type of gameplay you're looking for. But I think the basic starting point for most people, the HyperCrypt Legion Necron Battleforce box set is perfect. And then adding in the Combat Patrol gives you the majority of this list. Then you just have a couple of more like big choices to make. I think the Silent King is an automatic inclusion. And then very often you're going to see that NightBringer as he's just really good. And then again, I think the HexMark Destroyers are great. but you don't necessarily have to go this route. If you do like the HyperCrypt Legion box set and you're not particularly huge fan of the actual like combat patrol itself, you could just fill out the army with whatever different models you like. But I think this is a great starting point, a great 1,000 point and 2,000 point army based off of the Necron Battleforce. And then I think using the HyperCrypt detachment is the best choice right now, but it doesn't mean that the other detachments aren't viable. So let me know what you've been running in your existing Necron army, or what you think of the new HyperCrypt Legion box set. If you already have the Combat Patrol and you think this pairs nicely with it. If you've had the opportunity to use the NightBringer or Silent King, or played against them, let me know what you think of them down in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video and got any value out of it, hopefully by now Tabletop Bros has earned your subscription. So that is it for the Necron Battleforce HyperCrypt Legion Necrons Quick Start Guide. Based off of this box set and the Combat Patrol, I think this is a perfect jumping off point for any new Necrons army. And that's it from the Tabletop Bros. Later!